To read the Bible in a year, you need 30 minutes to listen or read and 5 days each week. Join us here at St.Andrews for Bible in a Year.
Week 11. And for us, our first one in this year, right?
Technically second.
Oh, okay.
First one we're recording in the new year.
Oh, great.
So, because week 10 came out New Year's Day. So.
Week 11. Yes. Look at all my nice check marks.
Yeah. That's what's nice about those bookmarks.
Yes, I really like how you made the bookmarks with a check, with a little box. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and the new ones will be coming out soon. So, those will be getting in people's hands in the next week or so.
A whole new set.
Yep.
Do you also realize we only have one more book left in the law, or the Pentateuch?
Yeah. It's going to feel nice to be out of the Pentateuch.
I don't know. I feel like I might miss it later, but, well, not Numbers or Leviticus. But
Hey, just remember, you kept saying, we're getting into Numbers. It'll be better.
And it was a little better. I mean, there are some stories in Numbers.
Yeah. It's still just... It's rough.
Yeah, well, honestly, Numbers, this second half of Numbers was really rough for me. You know, when I preach on Joshua, you know, I often have people that have this tension of like the God of love and this God of war, and I don't usually feel it in Joshua. I felt that tension in the second half of Numbers a lot. Like, Korah's rebellion, really hard for me.
Yeah, so Korah's rebellion is not pretty. I shared with you earlier in the week that this is a story my father used on me as a kid of, you know, God's going to correct and punish and grow.
Your dad likes using obscure Bible passages for things.
Yeah, he does. He did better in Old Testament in college than he did in New Testament.
Oh, unusual.
Yeah.
Well, good for him. Well, because here's the thing. So Korah, what he wants...
It feels very, like, democratic almost.
Well, it's what we have.
Yeah.
He's like, all in the congregation should be holy. And the Lord should be with all of them. Right? He's just on the wrong side of Pentecost.
And it's kind of funny because, what was it? It's just a couple chapters earlier when a handful are called out before Moses and the Spirit moves and there are two men who are out. And
Yes.
And Joshua, out of jealousy, saying, "Oh no, you need to stop this." And Moses' replies, "If all could and would in this way." And we were talking about it on the opposite side of Pentecost.
Yes.
But I think there's a heart of Korah that's corrupt.
Yes, he's challenging the Levites, right? He's like, why are they set apart? And it's like it's a challenge to Moses, which took me back to, you know, a couple chapters ago when it talked about how Moses was meek. And like the most meek among men or something like that. Where was that? I just saw it.
Yeah, we talked about that for a bit as well last week.
So we talked about it last week. And so it's like he's challenging Moses that, like, you chose Aaron and the Levites because he's your brother, maybe. Is this, like, a family connection thing? And so he's just challenges and... But it's so rough. I mean, it's so difficult. And then there's the other tribes that... They're passively against it, right? They don't say anything directly against Moses or the Levites, but they don't come when they're called to stand against them.
Right.
So they all come together, we get the glory of the Lord, and the earth opens up and it swallows them, and there's this consuming fire.
Now, my understanding in reading this, and I did read a little bit further, was that it sounds like Korah's whole line was eliminated.
Right.
But you get a little further into the second census, Numbers 26. And where is it? When the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a warning, but the sons of Korah did not die. That's all that's said, but that line continues. I found a little bit of grace in that, where it seemed like the ones whose heart was against God
Yeah.
were the ones who were consumed. And there's a struggle that I think is always going to be from the age of grace looking at the age of law.
Yeah, it just feels so harsh. I mean, I hear that consuming fire, and I think about, the burning bush that was not consumed. And I'm just like, but why? Why does it have to be? And it is. The end of the story really struck me too. So, and then all of a sudden there's this plague, which happens a couple times in Numbers. All of a sudden there's this plague. And it's like Moses knows, and he tells Aaron to quickly, get his censer and put it on the fire and use it for atonement for the congregation. So Aaron does it, and he runs. We don't get that kind of dramatic thing all the time. He runs like as fast as he can into the middle of the people, and he stands there between the living and the dead, and it stops.
Which that's going back into Hebrews. The high priest that stands before us, one sacrifice to finish all. And I highlighted that verse because it's, ooh, wow, that's leading towards and showing what is to come. But we're not there yet. There's hope. There's temporary solution.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps.
Because I think I was reading the end of Hebrews at that time. And that's what jumped out at me, or it was still with me, because when you sit with that Jesus is the high priest, he's the one who permanently stands where every other high priest failed, or fails.
Here you see Aaron, who's the first high priest, standing there. Yeah, that's really interesting.
And it's just, again, there's that archetype of there is one who is better, who is coming. This is only a temporary redemption, because there is a greater one coming.
It's a long temporary.
I know.
Long temporary.
I know.
So that was really hard for me. There's some other parts of it that are hard, but that one, it's hard to shake out of my mind.
And that's fair, because I mean that's what this last section of Numbers is kind of this ebb and flow of with God, against God. 14,000 get wiped out here, 20 here.
Yeah.
And it's not comfortable.
No.
And again, this is part of where I've been leaning into it, where it's okay. We're sitting in the Pentateuch, and it's that element of the law condemns, Christ fulfills, and we have grace. That's what I keep reminding myself of.
I know. I can understand, though, reading this, why there are times people feel like we're talking about different gods in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And it's like, okay, we're not, but it's
not comfortable. It's not.
It feels so different. But, I mean, maybe we should think about the fact that we take God's grace for granted.
That is a fair assessment.
So the staff butting after it is kind of nice.
It's a beautiful little interlude, yes.
So, and it's sort of like, this is going to make it really clear, right? No one can do this. So whoever staff blooms, that is who God chooses.
It's the one that is chosen.
And it's crazy, right? This staff that is clearly has no roots and isn't connected to anything, produces blooms and bears ripe almonds.
If I remember correctly, this is one of the things that is in the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, I don't remember.
I think it's like a jar of manna, the Ten Commandments, and Aaron's staff. Or portion of it.
Does it always bloom?
That's one of those things that Indiana Jones, if you were ever to actually find it. No, I'm not approaching that.
Yeah, I'm not touching it. Not after that movie.
Nope.
That's fine.
But I mean there's a beauty to that thought where it's hidden away somewhere. There's still a blooming staff with almonds.
Yeah. What struck you after that?
I really feel for Moses. This is going up into
20.
And just, he's frustrated. He's angry. There's this whole dynamic with everything that is happening between the people, between God. Moses is ticked, and then he strikes that rock twice, and that's it.
Yeah. And I actually read that a few times because I was like, okay, what is the deal here? And okay, yes, you're supposed to just have the water come out of the rock. But I also wonder, it's not clear that it's the Lord, because he says, "Here now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of the rock?"
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like that pronoun, although pronouns in Hebrew are quite vague, is that Moses is claiming that he is doing it.
Well, and it's that callback to shortly after they get out of Egypt.
Yes, there's another one.
And he strikes that rock that first time, almost a...
Well, God tells him to strike the rock that time.
Yeah, and it feels like this is him striking it again, but without God's...
clear direction.
And a degree of that, look at me kind of thing. I am God's prophet. Which, I mean, that also fits with the rebellions that they've been dealing with, and this element of authority that is being questioned.
Well, and this is right in between. I mean, we have chapter 20 starts with the death of Miriam.
Right.
We're going to end chapter 20 with the death of Aaron. So we're starting to see this transition of the generations. And so where's Moses' place going to be in the midst of this transition? And I mean, he's not young at this point.
Oh.
So, yeah. Because the people who went in, it's just Joshua and Caleb, right?
They're the only ones who are promised that they will see the promised land.
Right.
And that's it. Everybody else has to die in the desert, that whole generation. And it was, I think the number given was 20 and under would be the generation that would inherit. I think that's back in Leviticus.
Huh. I don't know. So the other thing I noticed in 20 is with passing over from Aaron to Eleazar. You know, because we've just read all of this stuff in Leviticus, right, about what's clean and unclean. And so I'm like, okay, guys, what are you going to do here? And so Aaron's garments, those priestly garments, are taken off of him and putting on Eleazar. My reading as it is before he died, so that they don't become unclean.
Right, and again, another thing to feel for, Aaron just kind of gets left there on top of the mountain.
Okay, but his death was marked, and the house of Israel, grieved him for 30 days.
But I actually missed that section. I don't know how, and it was a little bit later in Numbers. I was like, oh wait, when did Eleazar take over? I went back and I reread that, and there is a beauty to that transition. It almost feels like a fulfillment for Aaron. I don't know. I grieved for him now because it's everything he had done, and then he's left on a mountain.
Yeah, it didn't strike me the same way.
Yeah.
And then it's a while later, but I'm looking as we're talking about transitions. So the end of 27 is when Joshua is essentially commissioned.
Right. Because we're transitioning over and away
Right.
from Moses.
But he's not given all the authority. He's given some of the authority. But Eleazar is there, and the priest and the whole congregation, and they lay the hands on him and commission him as the Lord directed. So we're starting to get the leadership of that new generation. But do we just want to skip snakes on a plane?
You know that's actually where the medical symbol comes from.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. If you never realized,
Yes.
the medical symbol used today, that is a snake climbing a pole, comes out of Numbers 21. And that we can move on from there.
Okay, that's an interesting story. It does come up in the lectionary. Oh, but if you move down in 21, Spring Up, Oh Well. Did you have that camp song, Spring Up, Oh Well, splash, splash?
No.
No.
I've never
And I'm
heard
just like,
this.
oh, I didn't realize it was right out of Scripture. And like, the people of Israel sang this song. I was like, oh, that's fun.
Okay, if we're going on things we had at camp,
Yeah.
there was a spring at camp that the camp ran into a rock and drilled 3 holes in, and you could go and drink out of.
Oh, cool.
And they called it Moses' Rock. They shut it down years later because apparently,
Oh,
yeah,
not so clean.
no.
Oh.
But I used to drink out of that all the time. But I had that at camp. I didn't have Spring Up, Oh Well.
Okay, so 22. This whole thing, 22, 23, 24, are this whole section about Balaam and, Moab and the Midianites, and it feels so kind of out of place because it's a perspective. Like, Balaam's outside of the people of Israel. All of these people are outside of Israel, yet it's right here in the midst of their story.
Right, and see, I actually love the story of Balaam
I know, yeah.
because of what's to come. But it is odd.
It's such a switch in perspective.
Well, and even the fact that you have Balaam, who's kind of this wild man, but yet he hears the voice of God.
Yes.
But he's not a prophet of God, but not a prophet.
Well, it's like, how is he not a prophet, though, if, like, he is speaking to God?
I don't know. Like, Balaam is a character. I did also look this stuff up. There are some interesting Jewish legends that Balaam was raised up as a counterpoint to Moses.
Oh.
And that he was someone who was on the edge of what was the people of Israel, and then what would be the Gentile people. And he still heard from God and kind of pointed people to God, but not perfectly. There's some unique legends within Jewish history about him.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of makes sense, though, of why the people of Moab, or the kings of Moab, I guess, go to him, and they are asking him to curse the Israelites because they're scared of them.
Right.
So 3 times they ask him to do that, and 3 times he's like, ask
do
the
it.
Lord, and I can't. I cannot speak what the Lord has not told me to speak. And, yeah. Do you want to talk about the donkey? You like the donkey part.
Well, we'll talk about donkey first. Sorry, there's another piece in here that's also interesting and credited to Balaam that's right there at the end. But yes, there's... I'm sorry, I always giggle when we read Balaam's donkey on Sunday because the NRSV says Balaam's ass.
Yes.
And even in Christmas, when we sing...
Ox and ass before him lie.
And then I have my kids and every other teenager in the building go, did we just sing ass in church?
We did.
We did. It means donkey.
Multiple meanings of different words.
Just move on, kid. I always get a kick out of those Sundays. Your teenagers find them entertaining and will remember them.
Yes.
But yes, Balaam's donkey, and the fact that... I always read this and I'm amazed at how God will move, and this is what I walk away with, where he will move either with us and alongside, or we will move with him and alongside him, or he'll move and make it work without us. And that's what happens, is God is moving and Balaam somehow misses it but hears it, because God tells him to go with these men and then sends his angel to kill Balaam.
Well, he tells him not to go, and then it's like he knows he's going to go. And so, okay, if the men call you, you can go with them, but only do what I tell you.
Right.
So it's like the secondary, right? First he told him not to go.
Well,
right?
and I have to imagine that that little rider, but only do what I tell you, that somehow Balaam's heart had become set against.
No.
And that we don't have that context.
The part that stood out to me in this is, the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, obviously. But then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam. So it's that, opening. And we see that so much in the Gospels. But yeah, and it is an interesting thing, like, if your donkey, if your horse, if your dog could talk, what would they say? And the donkey's like, well, first of all, why did you keep striking me? And then, don't you know me? Is this how I usually act? And he's like, oh, well, no.
Gotta feel for him a little bit because Balaam is getting called out by his own donkey. But it's funny. It's good.
Yeah.
But after that, Balaam gets up to that high point where he, will you curse these people? Will you curse just a
Right.
third, just a diminishing number of these people? And each time he pronounces a blessing on them. And it's that final oracle. It's that one that there's a striking beauty to it. And we read this every Christmas, don't we? We're pretty close to it.
What?
24:17. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. It shall crush the forehead of Moab, and break down the sons of Sheth. Edom shall be disposed. Seir also, his enemies shall be disposed. Israel is doing valiantly, and one from Jacob shall exercise
dominion. Yeah.
and destroy the survivors of cities.
We don't read that, which means, but I hear what you're saying. So this is echoed.
Yeah.
And I'd have to look it up, but it's either Isaiah or Micah. The only readings we do are Genesis, Isaiah, Micah, and then we move into Luke and Matthew.
So we don't I thought we did.
But this is what means is this is echoed in another one of the prophecies.
Well, this is the second prophecy of Christ, following the one that God gave in Genesis.
Right. Or it's very similar. We'd have to look at the language. Maybe the language is reminding us of Genesis 3, or it's one of the Isaiah or Micah passages. But yeah, it's definitely, I can hear how the language is echoing. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, but so it's easier for me to sort of jump here. So we have all of that, right? But then, so Israel wants to go through Edom. And they say no, and they go around it, right? All of that's before Balaam. And then later, the people want to go through another place, and they say no and come out and attack them, and they're all destroyed. But then we get to the place where they destroy Moab and Midian. And I mean, it lists that Balaam is killed. Where is this?
Oh, yeah.
There, 31, right?
Yep.
Vengeance on Midian. And they also killed Balaam, the son of Beor, with the sword. And then this is another part that's really rough, right? Then in 31, the rest of it is essentially, it's warfare, but it's the classic killing, rape, and pillage. That's what it is. And then they list all of the plunder, essentially, and where it went.
And that's one of the hard parts to sit with, especially as we go into what's going to be the histories of Israel, is these moments where they just, nope, everything dies.
Yeah. And then there's those parts where it's like the stranger among you or the sojourner is still a part of you. It is a very strong tension.
It's almost two different footings at two different times.
Yeah, and it could be.
In the broken... This is a harsh thing where it's the place that I sit. In the broken world we live in, there is a time and a place, and even in Ecclesiastes it says this, for violence. I don't think that's the default setting. I don't think that's the desired setting.
Yeah.
But it's there. It has an application. It's not meant to be comfortable. And I don't think it's something we're meant to sit with and go, oh, wow, that was amazing. Let's do that again.
Yeah.
Because even when you sit with those pieces of it in history going, okay, it's a people that in some way is against God. And they need to be removed. It still doesn't sit well.
Yeah. Well, and it's like carving out. But it's like, was there another way to do that? But I don't know.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 26 already with the there were still descendants of Korah.
Right, so this is the census again.
And the number. It's like, oh my, it's, you know, it feels like so many people die, and yet here we are, and it's not that different.
In Numbers 1, in that first census, there's 603,000 who are counted. Mm-hmm. In this one, it's 601. There's just 2,000 difference.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the midst of everything that is, God sent this plague and that plague and wiped out, I mean, they're maintaining an incredible birth rate.
Yeah.
To be at that number.
Yeah, and it's a generation. So is it 40 years? Or is that our symbolic number here?
I think we've gotten to the 40 years. We're right there towards the end of it, and because number starts wrapping up and transitioning over. Not fully, but just it's changing the footing.
Right, Joshua's commission there is what I mentioned in the next chapter. But hold on, we're not going to skip the daughters.
Oh, no.
Of Zelophehad. Because they're actually the very end of the book again.
I was going to say, they come up, and it's a... I didn't realize how they were in parody in the two parts, and there's a beauty to that. So, yes.
Yeah. So they come, and they're like, so if our father has no sons... do we not get to be a part of this? And so it says, okay, if there are no sons, the daughters inherit. Like this is what the Lord commands. This is what the people do, and they go on. But it comes back, right? Because wait a minute. If we can convince them to marry into our tribe, do we then get that? Mm-hmm. Right? And the answer is no. The inheritance will stay in the tribe.
It sets up this adoption, almost, of how a lineage can continue even when it falls off, is cursed or broken.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I think this is around the time we started transitioning into Luke. In the Bible reading. We're not going to talk Luke long. But there's a contention between Luke and Matthew in genealogies. Yes, there is. And I was reading about that.
Well, you don't get to the genealogy in Luke until chapter 3.
Right. I'm a little bit further in Luke.
Yeah.
But it paired well because then when I was reading about the differences in the genealogies, it references back to the daughters of...
In Mark it does.
In Luke.
In Luke.
Well,
right, of course,
in some
Mark
of
doesn't have one.
The extra stuff.
I've never even thought of that.
In the extra stuff, not in Luke itself. But it references back of here's how these lineages could have worked because there's this tradition of adoption that is established in Numbers 27 and Numbers 36 that exists because you have things like Ruth and Boaz. Wow. Mm-hmm. And you have this laid out at the end of Numbers so that even though a line may cease or become cursed, there's a means for redemption within the tradition of the people.
Yeah, and I mean, Boaz and Ruth is a little bit different because, I mean, Boaz is her kinsman redeemer, so we're not talking about outside of the tribe. And this basically says, no, we're not going to do that. So let them marry who they think is best. That's nice, right?
It is.
Took a long time for all women to hear that. Let them marry who they think is best. Only they shall marry within the clan of the tribe of their father. Which, I mean, it sounds like it's limiting, but you go back to the census and it's at least 20,000 people, right? So.
And it's the first use of Noah as a female name. Because one of the daughters is Noah. Sorry. That one caught my attention.
That's interesting. I don't think I've met a woman named Noah, but I'm sure it's going to come up soon. And that's it. That's like the end. And then there's just, these are the commandments and the rules that the Lord commanded through Moses to the people of Israel. The plains by Moab, by the Jordan at Jericho. And Numbers is done. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's also the cool cities of refuge thing. But...
that's a whole neat little set of laws that's worth diving into as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. But there's the beginning divisions of the land. Reuben and Gad stay outside of the promised land, but they continue to fight with, so that everyone can be settled in the promised land. And, you're rolling right into Deuteronomy. That is that transition in full.
Yeah. So it's an interesting book. It had some things that...
It has highs and lows and ups and downs.
It has huge highs and huge lows.
It is like every other New Testament book, or Old Testament
Old Testament book. Oh, well, let's switch to the New Testament. We'll be in Deuteronomy soon enough.
Colossians.
Colossians. Okay, this is what I got. My kids have this cartoon they like called RoboCarpool. And we have this one book. I don't even know where Troy found it, but we have this one book from RoboCarpool. And it's, it's a safety series book. So it's about how to cross the street safely or how to, ride in the car safely. And so each page, it starts out and it's like, what not to do. It's like, don't run out into the street without looking. Don't open your door into the midst of traffic, right? So it does all these things of what not to do, which we always, when we're reading it, it's always what, and they're like, not to do. And then you turn the page and it's what to do.
Do you remember?
Uh-oh. I don't know.
You did some youth ministry.
Yes.
With Camp Hill.
Yes.
And this would have been around that time. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation, in conjunction with the rail system down there, did a public service video.
Oh.
And it went international.
I don't remember it.
Dumb Ways to Die.
Oh, man. It's like what not to do.
It was a whole song and dance. And it listed off, these are dumb ways to die, including messing with the rail system. Sorry, you say that, and that's all I can hear.
You can only think about what not to do and what to do. But this is what I mean as I read Colossians, right? Colossians 1 and 2 are like, what not to do, sort of over and over again. And then you get to chapter 3, and it's like, what to do, which is always really helpful.
It is a compressed, quick book from Paul that it's a lot real fast.
It is a lot real fast, because right there, 1:15, he's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. Like, some of that language is like ends up straight in the Nicene Creed.
That's a full-on statement of faith from Paul. Mm-hmm. Here's the base. Here's what we're working with. And then he goes into it. And, yeah.
Yeah, it's also interesting. The context is interesting because it talks about Laodicea. And we don't have a letter from Laodicea. But it makes it pretty clear in here that there was one.
Yeah, and isn't that the one where he says, read their letter as well?
At the end. Yes.
And pass this letter on
so
to
you're
them.
supposed to, exchange, share your letters. But this is the only one we still have.
Yeah, it's interesting that Paul is actually even encouraging that. Circulate these letters, not just to you alone. They are valuable teachings, which that gave context for, okay, this is why we have.
Well, and chapter 3 and 4, I'm like, oh, we have especially 3, so much echoing. Mm-hmm. Here there's neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and in all, which feels almost exactly like Galatians.
Galatians 5:22, because it is.
And then we have the fruits of the Spirit, almost the same.
Tying right into it.
Tying right into Galatians. So that I'm like, oh, and then we get to 3:18, and that section about wives and husbands and children, and I'm remembering our conversation in Ephesians.
Well, and isn't that the scripture verse that your grandmother had you?
The one I
Well,
had was, it wasn't, no, it was Ephesians. Yeah, you're right. There's the Ecclesiastes ones I always remember too. So there's all these echoing, and you remember that, like, some of these letters Paul expected to be shared, obviously, but some, he's got to tell the same thing because he's writing to different people.
Well, in Colossians, Colossus,
Colossae?
Colossae, whatever it is in Turkey.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even then, this is a whole different section of the world.
For sure from Romans.
And from even areas that he has...
Yeah.
It's beginning to see how Christianity is spreading. And not just at the feet of Paul, but of others. And Paul he's becoming a central figure and keeping a uniform message with the other apostles.
Yeah. So I think this is the first time I've really thought about that. And, like, seeing these echoes as they're being read so close together is really interesting. Now, I have to say, for the first time in this version, I'm reading the ESV or listening to it, that it didn't say it the way my heart knows it. Like usually chapter 3, I say, now clothe yourself with Christ. And this is more put on your new self. And I mean, the meaning's the same. It's just not the same sort of connotation that I feel like I know in my heart. So that happens in translations.
Which is a fun, neat little spot where
Yeah.
different translations in different ways echo.
Yeah.
And carry us.
Well, and sometimes they challenge us. Like, okay, that's how you held on to it. But is that really the full meaning or just the part you like?
Or is it the part that's now appropriate for where you are in life?
Yeah.
So. But the root is still there, where it is this whole new life within Christ.
Yeah.
And it affects every piece of who you are. I don't always do well with this, but Colossians 4:6, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each other. Just that element of it, where there's this, in every way, whether it's speech or action, we're called to a grace that just reveals itself because of Christ.
Yeah. Like, that's what we're supposed to lean into, right? It's so easy to lean into criticism.
Frustrations were negative, and
Yes. I'm very easily frustrated the last couple of weeks.
well,
Really wanted the kids to go back to school today.
yeah, snow day.
Snow day. But yeah, how do you continually try to turn from that and lean into grace and patience and self-control and steadfast love?
Well, and the piece that's for me is it's a continued growth.
Yeah.
We don't get to look and say, I have arrived. At least that's the piece I keep saying with Ray, where it's, it is Ray, he'll say something stupid, and I've learned all, and it's, are you dead? Then you haven't learned all.
I think that's why I like the clothes image, because it's like, okay, I'm going to take this sweatshirt off and I'm going to put this, other sweater on. And, there's something different when you change your clothes, right?
Or even seasonal. And
Yeah.
Life has seasons. Life has chapters.
But it felt more tangible, like you could connect to it in that way. So Colossians is lovely. I mean, it's 4 quick chapters. And it reminds us of so many key things that Paul keeps bringing out.
And it's a good kind of base check. Where am I? What is this? Mm-hmm. Be in Christ. I have...
Well, steadfast in prayer. How did I not echo Philippians in that? That's like echoing Philippians there. The beginning of 4.
Nope.
And so maybe as we read these letters, we'll start to pull out, like, these were the big key things Paul wanted to make sure that people got. And it is about living with one another and living into Christ. Those are the two things I got right now.
No, that works. It is putting on who is Christ and living into that, imitating him.
So for the year ahead, I would much rather think that I will be living into what to do as opposed to what not to do.
So I think that's a great spot to ask this question.
Yes.
What word did you get?
Oh, I got content.
Content.
Yeah.
I got welcome.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I like that one. I feel like content is already like trying to get me to not rush. Or to not like be like, if I do this, I get that. You know, like just like, this is where you are. Like, be there. I don't know. Any first thoughts on welcome?
I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I think it is.
Because I thought I was doing that already.
I don't think it means you weren't.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think
We'll
it
find out.
maybe means that is something to live more into. A whole year to explore.
It'll be an interesting word to walk with.
Wherever you are in this day, even if numbers has been a huge challenge, may you find something to hold on to that is what you do choose to live into Christ. And we don't have to be comfortable with every part of it.
No. We live in an age of grace, and thank God for that.
Oh, amen.
Amen.
Et tu spiritus Dominus Bible BIBLE Bible